My name is Olivia Wilson. I'm 34 years old, and I was like a second mother to my younger sister, Samantha. We grew up inseparable, sharing dreams and secrets. When she got engaged, I was overjoyed to be the first person she called, and I was genuinely happy to accept her request to be her maid of honor. To help create her perfect wedding day, I invested tens of thousands of dollars and countless hours planning every detail with care. But there was always a pair of angry eyes watching my every move. My mother, Savannah, a woman who thrived on controlling our family. I never imagined there would come a day, a family meeting, when she would look me straight in the eyes and say something so heartbreaking. Before I share what happened, please let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit the like button and subscribe for more true stories. Now, let me tell you how my world fell apart. I still remember when I used to be Samantha's whole world. When she was 3, I already knew how to braid her hair, teach her how to stack blocks, and tell her bedtime stories. Just before our mother would step into the room, adjust the nightlight, and say, "Don't overstimulate her brain, Olivia. You're not her mother." My father, Thomas, existed on the outer edges of our family dynamic, always choosing peace over confrontation whenever my mother's behavior crossed the line. She never once called me her pride. That phrase was reserved for Samantha, the artistic and creative one, as my mother put it, even though at the time, all Samantha could draw were blotchy circles in red and blue. I was the practical one, the dry and dull one, according to my mother. So, when the roof leaked, I arranged to have it fixed. When the bills piled up, I quietly covered the shortfall with my savings. That pattern continued into our adult years. I supported Samantha financially so she could pursue her passions when our parents' contributions fell short. My own path led me to become a financial advisor at a respected firm in Hartford. I never complained, because I believe that's just what older sisters do. When Samantha accidentally hit a stranger's car in a parking lot, no one could have guessed that the man she crashed into would become her fiancé. That man was David, a soft-spoken structural engineer with a smile Samantha wouldn't stop talking about. I listened and felt a quiet warmth in my chest. Samantha was changing. She seemed steadier, gentler. After 2 years of dating, their engagement surprised no one, and once again, I was the first person Samantha called, screaming with excitement over the phone. "Olivia, he proposed. You'll be my maid of honor, right? I can't do this without you." Her voice was overflowing with joy that day. I smiled through the phone, tears falling down my face from sheer happiness for her. "Of course I'll be your maid of honor. I'm ready." From the start, everything unfolded exactly the way I'd hoped. Samantha and I spent entire weekends venue hunting, discussing color palettes, and building inspired Pinterest boards. I wrote down every single detail after each call, wanting to make sure this wedding would be the dream she deserved. My apartment slowly filled with bridal magazines, fabric swatches, budget spreadsheets, and printed checklists. I thought maybe, just maybe, this time, I would truly get to be the sister by her side, not just the silent support in the shadows. But the first crack appeared during a routine family dinner when we sat down to talk about the wedding budget. Mother interrupted me 3 times. I'll never forget the feeling when, right in the middle of a full family dinner, my mother said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Oh, I already called the hotel you booked for the wedding. I asked them to change the contact person. I'll be handling things directly now. Olivia's too busy, so I thought it'd be faster if I just put my name down." I froze in place, sitting in the living room. In front of me was the list of vendors I had spent 3 weeks working with, including that venue. I had already sent the contracts, paid the deposit, even scheduled the first appointments. Samantha said nothing. She gave an awkward smile, picked up a piece of garlic bread, and avoided my eyes. Dad quietly served himself more salad. And Sarah, somehow invited to this supposedly intimate family dinner, took a sip of red wine and gave a small, knowing smile. "I already scheduled the meetings, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "You can still come," she replied breezily. "I'm just helping out. Don't make a big deal of it." But it was a big deal. That was the first step. The first step in her plan to edge me out as the maid of honor and make room for someone else. Someone with no memories, no responsibilities, but with one distinct advantage. She knew how to keep my mother pleased. 3 days later, I saw Sarah at the bridal boutique, trying on a bridesmaid dress next to Samantha. I stood outside, frozen, watching the two of them laugh, shoulders brushing like they had grown up together. The dress Sarah wore was the exact one I had once sent to Samantha as a link. Samantha had told me, "It's a bit too flashy." But now, she stood beaming in it, right beside Sarah. I walked in, forcing a smile. "Oh, I didn't know you two were dress shopping today?" Samantha looked momentarily startled. But then Mom stepped out from behind them, holding a latte like this was just a casual Sunday outing. "We wanted it to be a surprise for you. Don't be so sensitive, Olivia." I wanted to say something, but my mother's eyes silenced me before I could even take a breath. That look had silenced me my entire childhood. I started getting removed from all the wedding group chats. "A technical error," Mom said. "Nothing to worry about." But when I asked about the things Samantha had previously asked me to handle, the flower color palette, the guest gifts, the reception playlist, she only replied, "Mom's handling it." I asked, "Why is Mom handling it?" Samantha was silent for a few seconds. Then she said, "Because you tend to go overboard, Olivia. Everything you do, I know it comes from a good place, but it's a lot of pressure." I was stunned. Pressure? I had used my own money, my time, my love, all to make her wedding beautiful. And now I was being framed as the reason everything felt heavy? I pulled back from a few tasks, not out of anger, but because I told myself I needed to respect the distance Samantha was creating. I focused on the wedding gift, a 5-night honeymoon in Bali, a beachside resort, a suite with an ocean view tub. I listed the reservation under gift from Olivia Wilson, hoping she would understand that no matter what happened, I was still behind her, still loved her, still her sister. But each day, Samantha grew colder. She canceled our usual Sunday brunch, then canceled the joint dress fitting we had once promised to do together. When I asked, she sent a single text, "Sarah will go with me." "You're busy anyway." The feeling of no longer belonging in my own family began to seep in, like mold spreading in a house that once felt safe. I couldn't put my finger on what exactly was wrong, but every little act, from my mother and from Samantha, felt calculated to push me further out. And the worst part? I started to believe. Maybe I really was the problem. One afternoon, I overheard my mother on the phone with a distant cousin. Her voice was syrupy sweet. "Olivia always overdoes everything. She acts like she's sacrificing, but really, she just wants control. Samantha is stressed, feeling like some unwilling heiress to a mess she didn't ask for." I stood behind the door, my hands shaking. I don't think she knew I was there, but each word felt like a blade straight through my chest. I had once believed that if I just tried a little harder, everything would get better. But the truth was, I was fighting something that never wanted me to win. I told Emma, the one friend I could still confide in. She was stunned. "Olivia, can't you see? Your mom is manipulating everyone. Sarah is a pawn to replace you. Samantha's being influenced. And you're being erased. So slowly no one even notices." I shook my head. "Number Samantha's my sister." Emma took my hand, her eyes glassy with emotion. "She is. But even sisterhood needs protection from toxicity. Blood doesn't always mean someone is on your side. Then came the fateful meeting. Mom called it a necessary conversation, set for Thursday at my parents' house. I wore a modest dress, brought a notebook where I had tracked every single expense I had contributed. I didn't know exactly what I was walking into, but I knew. I was about to lose something, either my family or the illusion that I ever truly had one. When I arrived, Samantha was seated beside Mom. Sarah sat where I used to sit. Dad stood in the back, looking down at his phone, silent. But he messaged me privately. "I don't agree with any of this." Mom started, with no preamble. "Olivia, you're making Samantha feel overshadowed. You're overbearing, controlling, and making her wedding day stressful." I was speechless. I just wanted to help. Samantha didn't look at me. She said softly, "I know you mean well, but I feel smothered. I can't be myself." I asked, "Then what do you want me to do?" Mom answered for her, "You're no longer invited." The whole family agreed. I don't remember exactly how I left that house. I only remembered driving through 3 red lights without realizing it, then pulling over and sobbing like a child. My phone buzzed. A message from Dad. "You don't deserve this. I'll talk to your mother." I told Emma everything. She sat still for a moment, then said, "This isn't just jealousy, Olivia. This is a calculated removal, and you need to draw the line. No one has the right to turn your love into something used against you." I nodded. For the first time in years, I wasn't crying because I was hurt. I was crying because I finally saw the truth. And the truth was, my mother never wanted Samantha and me to be close. She only wanted us turned against each other, so she could stay in the center. I stared at my phone screen. 2 a.m. I had tried to sleep, but it was impossible. I kept replaying every word my mother said, every nod from Samantha and Sarah's face, not even attempting to hide the satisfaction of having replaced me in every role. I wrote out a list of everything I had paid for in the wedding. Each line felt like a small cut. Photographer, string quartet, guest favors, reception deposit, honeymoon. The total, over $18,000. I didn't write that list to ask for the money back. I wrote it to remind myself. I hadn't imagined any of this. I had been there. I had given. And I had been cast out. A few days later, I threw myself into work, trying to forget it all. That Friday evening, while discussing an investment project with a client, I heard my phone buzz. A new message. "Meet me at the cafe near our old school. 6 p.m. Just the two of us. Please." It was from Samantha. I didn't know what she intended to talk about, but if she was coming alone, without Mom, then yes, I wanted to see her. There were questions I'd been holding in far too long. Samantha sat down and ordered a chamomile tea. Her eyes were a little puffy. I looked at her for a long time, then said, "You know I'm not perfect. But you also know I would never do anything to hurt you. So why let Mom create that story?" Samantha didn't answer right away. She bit her lip, then pulled out her phone. "Did you know about this?" She showed me the screen. A string of messages, impersonating me. Each one cold, sharp. "I don't care what happens with your wedding. I won't come unless I get to make the decisions. You and your mother can handle it. Leave me out of it." I shook my head. "That wasn't me." "I know," Samantha said softly. "David traced the linked email. It wasn't yours. It was Mom's. She created a separate number, made a new account under a name almost identical to yours, and sent those messages." I choked. "You trusted her enough to believe I'd write something like that?" Samantha looked down at the table. "I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe you were just too successful to need me, that you stepped away out of pride, because I didn't want to believe Mom would do something like that. Her voice cracked on the last word. I sat still. What I felt wasn't anger. It was exhaustion. Exhaustion from realizing that I hadn't been pushed out because I did something wrong, but because my sister needed a reason not to feel small. Samantha told me Mom had orchestrated the family meeting, that she said, "Olivia will explode, and we need to stay firm." That Sarah was to become the new wedding mentor, less controlling, less flashy. And that if Samantha had any doubts, Mom had already prepared a speech to read on her behalf. I sat there listening, like I was reading a script I didn't know I'd been cast as the villain in. I asked her, "Do you really think I overshadow you? Or is that what Mom made you believe?" Samantha went quiet for a long time. Then she answered, "Both." Those words didn't pierce like a knife. They crushed like slow stone. I nodded, not blaming, not raging, just feeling a part of my heart quietly close. That night, I decided to cancel every remaining financial contribution to the wedding. I emailed each vendor, updating the point of contact. I called the resort in Bali, the honeymoon I had paid for with my savings, and canceled it. I left a note. Recipient no longer suitable for this gift. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because I needed to stop. I had been used long enough to learn kindness without boundaries becomes a noose. The next morning, I had over 20 missed calls from my mother. Her texts were a flood of guilt and accusations. "You canceled the honeymoon out of jealousy? You're selfish. Now everyone can see. You never wanted Samantha to be happy." Then came Samantha. Just one message. "I'm sorry. I understand now." I didn't know how much she understood, but at least she was beginning to see what I had carried for over a year. I turned off my phone, took a personal day, stayed home, and I wrote. I wrote about our childhood, about how I braided her hair every morning, about how I faked being sick so she wouldn't get a 0 on a late assignment, about how I stood up at her graduation ceremony when Mom said, "It's too hot, not worth going." I wrote everything, so I wouldn't forget. Then I closed the notebook, and I started a new list. Boundaries. I will never let anyone cross again. 3 days later, Dad asked to meet me for lunch. He wore an old shirt. He looked thinner with dark circles under his eyes. He said, "Your mom. She wasn't always like this. But ever since Samantha was born, she started dividing the two of you." I knew, but I didn't know what to do. I asked, "Why didn't you speak up?" "Because I was afraid," he confessed. "I was afraid that if I defended you, Samantha would think I didn't love her. I was afraid of losing both of you. And in the end, you lost one," I said. "Me." He reached across the table and held my hand. "I want to make it right, even if it's late." I nodded, but inside I was no longer a child waiting to hear those words. Inside, I was a woman learning to protect her own heart. That afternoon, I received a message from Aunt Catherine, Dad's sister. She told me, "Years ago, your mother excluded me from your parents' wedding because she was jealous I got a scholarship abroad." She sighed. "It's happening again. But maybe you can be the one who breaks the cycle." I didn't reply immediately, but her words stayed with me. Maybe. Maybe Mom didn't resent me because I was the controlling older sister. Maybe she resented me because I was a woman who could stand on her own, something she never learned to do. That evening, Samantha called. Her voice was tentative. "I don't know if you still want to be involved, but I want you to know. Mom deleted my real messages. She faked the email. She staged it all. I only saw what she let me see." I asked, "Did you ever wonder why?" She gave a sad laugh. "Because she didn't want me to trust you. She was afraid that if I got too close to you, I'd see she was the one pulling us apart." I stared at the ceiling. Tears came, uninvited. "So, What do you want to do now? I asked. I want to fix it, not just so the wedding can go on, but because I miss you. I sat still. Then I answered. Then let's start with the truth. We planned a family meeting. This time, hosted by me. Dad agreed to come. Catherine flew in from Vermont. Samantha brought David. Mom didn't know the agenda. She thought it was to discuss budget. When she arrived, everyone was already seated. Samantha began. I know the truth about the messages, about how you tried to drive a wedge between me and Olivia. I need answers. Mom stiffened, then gave a cold smile. Who told you? Olivia? Of course. She always knows how to make herself the victim. I said nothing. I just opened my laptop and projected the email logs, IP matches, login histories, all from Mom's old phone, which Samantha had used to investigate. No one said a word. Catherine sighed. Dad leaned forward and said, Enough, Savannah. It's time you stop manipulating everyone. Mom burst into tears. She screamed, accused us of staging it, of smearing her. But no one was listening anymore. Samantha took my hand. Olivia, you'll be the maid of honor if you're willing. But first, I'm sorry. I looked at her. Her eyes were red, her face thinner than it had been weeks ago. And I knew. The apology wasn't perfect, but it was the beginning of something new. I nodded. I'll stand beside you. But this time, I'm standing there because I choose to. No one is forcing me. No one is controlling me. After the meeting, I sat alone on the porch and wrote the final page of the journal I had started the day Mom kicked me out of the wedding. I wrote, I used to think love meant giving without condition. But I've learned. True love begins where we draw the line against who is allowed to hurt us, even if they're the ones who gave us life. And I thought it would end there. After the family meeting, after Samantha's apology, after our mother was forced to confront the evidence that she had manipulated both of us, I thought I had stepped into a new chapter. One of truth, of reconciliation, of healing. That's what I thought. Until the morning of the wedding. I opened the door to the bridesmaid's dressing room and saw Sarah standing there, wearing a pale cream silk dress, holding the bouquet I had personally ordered 3 months ago. Her face calm, as if her presence here was the most natural thing in the world. I froze in place, my hand gripping the doorknob. No greeting, no explanation, nothing but that faint smile on her lips, followed by one simple sentence. Samantha's mom asked me to help, just in case you got too emotional and couldn't be fully present. I didn't respond. I simply stared at Sarah, and in that moment, I saw clearly the shamelessness, the satisfaction, and the control that she carried straight from my mother. The air in the room thickened, like the heavy winter fogs that wrap around Hartford's early mornings. And I understood. Today wasn't just Samantha's wedding. Today was a test. To see if I had truly escaped my mother's grip. I walked into the room without saying a word, placed the extra bouquet on the table. In the mirror, I saw Sarah shrug, then continue adjusting her hair, like this was her own portrait session. Samantha wasn't there at that moment. She was in the main dressing suite, with David, Dad, and the groom's family. No one knew that on this side of the curtain, behind the scenes of what was supposed to be a sacred day. Old patterns of control were being rebuilt, by familiar hands. I picked up my phone, intending to text Samantha. But I paused. I didn't want to ruin her day. I didn't want to do what my mother had done to me, turn personal emotion into a weapon that destroys joy, and I wasn't going to give Sarah the satisfaction of thinking she could drive me away. I sat down, unzipped my suitcase, took out the hairpin and final lipstick Samantha had once said she liked, the whispering rose shade I had ordered from France because it was sold out everywhere here. I wasn't going to let someone like Sarah, or anyone else, take away what I had built, even if it was just for a single moment. When Samantha walked in, she immediately sensed something was off. Her eyes moved from me to Sarah to the second bouquet. Her brows furrowed. Sarah? I thought, I told Mom we only needed Olivia? Sarah shrugged. Your aunt said this room still needed a lead. Samantha, you didn't want Olivia to handle everything alone, right? I said nothing. Samantha looked at me, clearly waiting for a reaction. I stayed quiet, then slowly stood up. Samantha, I said gently, you chose me to be your maid of honor. Today, I'm here not because of Mom, not because of Sarah, but because of your invitation. Samantha looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. You're my only maid of honor. Sarah, thank you for coming, but I'd like this room to be just for my closest. For the first time that day, Sarah wasn't smiling. The ceremony took place under a gentle autumn sky. The white tent set on the lawn of the lakeside resort shimmered in the honey-colored sunlight. I stood behind Samantha, holding her veil and bouquet, quietly watching her walk toward the altar, where David stood, beaming with uncontainable joy. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't moved, but because I had run out of tears long ago. Today, I didn't need to prove anything. I didn't need to be the perfect sister. I didn't need validation. Today, I just needed to be present, truly present, without struggle, without giving up parts of myself for anyone else. And at some point, I saw my mother's eyes from the front row. She looked at me, said nothing, didn't move. But I could see it, beneath her flawless makeup. The quiet anger that I had stayed, that I had not bowed out. But I didn't need her approval anymore. At the reception, I stood alone near the dessert table, watching people dance and chat. Samantha was in the center of her friend circle, radiant with laughter. Dad was talking to David. The air was lighter than I had expected, until Mother approached. Olivia, she said, her voice soft as a breeze. You look decent today. I turned toward her. Her eyes were no longer furious, but they weren't warm either. They were observing, calculating, as if assessing what pieces of me were still left to take. Thank you, Mom, I said. I didn't think you'd stay. Why would you think that? I thought you were smart enough not to repeat old mistakes. You know, overshadowing your sister was never wise. I turned fully to face her, for the first time looking directly into the eyes of the woman who birthed me, no longer afraid, no longer seeking approval. You can't erase me just because you can't stand the idea of someone being better than you. Her face tightened, but I didn't stop. I've been silent for years, letting you spark battles between us, letting you twist love into a tool for control. But today, I'm here, not to win your favor, not to rescue Samantha, but to stand up for myself. She didn't respond. Moments later, she turned and walked straight toward the lake. I remained, heart steady, not racing, not trembling. Only stillness remained, like the surface of the water after the last storm has passed. Later that night, when the party was over, Samantha came to find me in the hotel room. She had taken off her elaborate dress, now wearing a soft robe, a cup of mint tea in her hand. I still feel guilty about Sarah, she said. I didn't think Mom would invite her without telling me. Neither did I smiled. But now you know. And now you know to be careful. I do, she nodded. I think both of us have been too soft with Mom, because we just wanted her to love us, even just a little. I stayed quiet, then slowly replied, but the cost of waiting to be loved by someone who doesn't know how to love is that you lose yourself. Samantha turned to me. I don't want to lose you again. I placed my hand on her shoulder. Then don't. But don't ask me to disappear to keep you close either. The next morning, I left the resort early. Not out of anger, but because I wanted to end the day on my terms. No drama, no ending written by someone else. I drove back to Hartford in the early fog, played an old playlist, and smiled when I realized I wasn't sad anymore. Maybe because, for the first time, I no longer needed acceptance to feel worthy. A week later, Samantha sent the wedding photos. Among them was one of us, me holding her bouquet, her turning to smile at me. The light behind her made her veil look as if it were trimmed in sunlight. Beneath the photo, she wrote, "Thank you for not leaving me, even when I tried to cut you out of my life." I saved the photo in a special folder. My worth doesn't come from someone else's permission, but I know one photo can't rewrite an entire childhood of manipulation. And if I want true freedom, I'll need to do what I've always feared most: face my mother, not just in a single conversation, but in all the distorted memories she built, starting when I was just a child. I used to think the manipulation began when Mom excluded me from the wedding, but I was wrong. It didn't start with the fake emails, or with her bringing Sarah into the picture, or with the messages Samantha never received. It started long before that, with small comments, with silence, with glances a child couldn't understand, but always felt. I remember in first grade, I brought home my first drawing, a clumsy picture of a cat sleeping on a rug. I had spent hours coloring it with 5 different shades, and even attached a little springy tail to make it move more realistically. Mom looked at the picture, pressed her lips together, then flipped the paper over. "These colors don't follow composition rules. And what kind of cat has a tail like a spring? You need to pay more attention." I nodded. I didn't ask why she didn't praise it. The following week, Samantha, only 4 years old at the time, scribbled some crayon lines on paper and called it "A Wall of Wind." Mom taped it on the fridge, took pictures, called Grandma over to see it, told her friends over tea, "Samantha has an abstract eye beyond her age." I didn't feel jealous. I just learned to tuck my drawings away in drawers. Eventually, I stopped drawing altogether. I learned how to be good at chores, responsible, someone who knew what needed to be done. I cooked dinner when Mom wasn't home. I helped Dad pay the bills, took Samantha to school when Mom had a headache or was emotionally unbalanced. I didn't know what carefree or freedom meant anymore. I only knew the better I performed, the less Mom talked, the fewer things she criticized. And I thought, that was love. I was wrong. Once, when I got a perfect score on a math test, I ran home waving the report card. Mom was on the phone. I waited for her to hang up, then handed her the paper. "100 in math won't get you an art scholarship, Olivia," she said, setting the paper aside like it was a flyer. Samantha, sitting nearby, was humming a made-up tune. Mom turned to her. "Oh wow, did you write that? You're so talented, I can tell." I didn't cry. I just smiled and nodded, then quietly applied to the math club, the one place I could feel capable, even if no one at home cared. After Samantha's wedding, I started writing down memories like that every day, not to blame Mom, but to understand why I had let myself be controlled for so long that when I was excluded from something, I didn't even get angry. I asked myself, did I deserve to be excluded? Emma, my closest friend, looked at my notebook and said, "Olivia, you're rewriting your emotional history. That's the first step in breaking free from manipulation." It was Emma who introduced me to Anna, a family therapist. After 3 private sessions, Anna suggested a group session with Mom, with Samantha, and, if possible, with Dad. I hesitated. I wasn't afraid of speaking the truth. I was afraid I'd say too much, afraid Mom would twist my words, that Samantha would get hurt, that Dad would go quiet, afraid I'd fall back into that same loop. Speak up, be dismissed, then feel guilty for even daring to speak. But I agreed. Because for the first time in my life, I wanted to stand in a room where my feelings weren't edited, even if just once. The therapy room on Thursday morning was warm and airy. A U-shaped sofa, a pot of chamomile tea, soft golden light, no recorders, no whiteboard. Just Anna, silver-haired, eyes sharp but kind, and the four of us. Me, Samantha, Dad and Mom. Mom arrived last. She sat down without greeting anyone, arms crossed, her face sealed like she had walked into a courtroom where she was the accused and refused to acknowledge the judge's authority. Anna opened. Today is not about finding who's right or wrong. It's about giving everyone a space to speak honestly. No interruptions, no blaming. Mom rolled her eyes, but I didn't say a word. I was the first to speak. I told the story of the cat drawing, the math test, the time Samantha got to pick a dress with Mom while I was sent to the wrong store. I didn't cry. I spoke like I was reading a journal entry. But as I spoke, Samantha watched me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, something old, something real. Maybe it was the first time she'd ever heard me speak without minimizing, without skipping over the truth. When it was Mom's turn, she said, "I don't remember those things. Maybe you're too sensitive. I've always loved my daughters, but Olivia always exaggerates everything." Anna stopped her. "Savannah, it's not about whether you remember every detail. What matters is, Olivia remembers, and that makes it real for her." Mom stayed silent for a long time. Then she said quietly, "I didn't know how to raise an eldest daughter. I was an only child. My mother only loved me when I succeeded, when I obeyed. Maybe I've repeated that pattern without realizing it." The atmosphere softened. Samantha spoke about the pressure of being praised too much, about how she used to feel jealous of my accomplishments, then guilty for being the favored one, about the times she overheard Mom speaking ill of me and said nothing. Because if she spoke up, she might lose her place as the chosen child. Dad said very little, but when he finally spoke, he said, "I've been silent too long, out of fear. But silence is its own kind of complicity, and I'm sorry." I nodded, not as forgiveness, but as acknowledgement, because change only begins when people own their part, without deflection, without escape. The session ended in silence. Anna looked around and asked, "What does each of you want from the others?" I said, "I want to be believed when I say I'm hurt, not told I'm imagining things or being dramatic." Samantha said, "I want to be allowed to be myself, not someone's shadow, not the version of me Mom wishes I were." Dad said, "I want to see you two in peace, not because I order it, but because you choose it." Mom looked down at the floor. After a while, she said, "I want to relearn how to be a mother, but I'm not sure I still have the chance." I replied, "You don't need to be forgiven right away. You just need to stop hurting us." We left the therapy room at dusk. Outside the door, Mom paused, turned to me. "Olivia, do you think I'll ever be able to do it?" I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't hear manipulation in her voice. So I nodded. "Maybe, but it has to start with not denying my memories anymore." She nodded. No promises, no excuses, just a nod. And sometimes that's already a big beginning. But even though that session gave me a sliver of hope, the past has a way of knocking again just when you start to move forward. And it knocked. The day I received a letter from my mother's lawyer's office, notifying me of her decision to begin early division of assets. I received the letter on a Monday morning, just as I was sipping my first coffee and thinking I was about to begin a peaceful new week. A cream-colored envelope, thick paper, a deep red seal with the name of a private law firm. The sender line: Savannah Wilson Family Legal Office. I'd never once heard Mom mention having her own lawyer. I thought it must have been a mistake. I opened it, curious, not yet guarded. Inside were 3 pages. The first: Official notification of the estate division and trust assignment of Mrs. Savannah Wilson. I began to read. My mother's assets were to be transferred into a trust under the name of Samantha and a temporary co-trustee, Sarah. Full rights to our family home, the house I lived in until I was 26, would be passed to Samantha upon Mom's death or her relocation to a care facility. Her art collection had already been appraised and itemized, with the majority assigned to Sarah in recognition of emotional loyalty and care. And me? Not a word, not a single line, no explanation, no thanks. Not even a passing mention of Olivia Wilson, the eldest daughter, once the housekeeper, the crisis manager, the emotional backbone of the family. I placed the letter on the table. Silence. I didn't feel angry, not right away. What I felt was a terrifying emptiness, as if someone had drained the blood from my body before I even had time to notice the pain. An hour later, I called Dad. He only sighed. I didn't know about this. Your mother did it on her own. I asked, what does temporary co-trustee mean? With Sarah. It means if Samantha isn't financially capable yet, Sarah's name will be on the documents to help administer things. Everything was signed last month. I said nothing. Dad added, I didn't agree. But it's her private property. I have no legal standing. And then came the sigh. The one I had heard my entire childhood. The sigh he let out when Mom banned me from field trips because the eldest daughter should stay home to clean. When she called me dramatic for crying after not being invited to the stage at a thank you ceremony. It was the sigh of a man who saw the wrong, but never had the courage to stop it. I hung up. Samantha texted soon after. A long message, several paragraphs, but it all boiled down to one thing. I didn't know. I didn't ask for this. I don't agree with it. I believed her, but I also knew some wounds don't need consent to exist. My mother hadn't just excluded me from a house. She had erased me from the legacy, not in the financial sense, but in the symbolic one. As if to declare, you don't belong to this family's roots. You were just passing through. I didn't want the paintings. I didn't need the money. I had my own income. I'd been independent since I was 22, but I needed to know that I had once belonged there, that my memories, my efforts, my presence for decades couldn't simply be erased by a legal document. That night, I sat alone by the window, lamp glowing softly beside me, and opened the old letters Mom used to write. Scraps from college. Don't forget to heat up the soup for your sister. Call me if you're in trouble. I love you in my own way. And I realized, my mother never really said she loved me. She only taught me how to serve. That love meant exchange, sacrifice, silence. And if I did well, I would be left alone. Not loved. Just undisturbed. And I believed that was enough. For 30 years. Emma came by. She held me for a long time, then sat down beside me. You could sue, she said, at least to claim some moral fairness. I shook my head. I don't want to force my mother to give me a piece of something. I wanted her to want to. And if she doesn't, then I don't want it either. Then what are you going to do? I looked out the window. I think it's time I wrote a letter. I wrote it on a quiet Friday morning. No rage, no insults. I wrote like I was closing a chapter in a book. Mom, I'm not surprised to receive the estate division, but I had hoped you'd choose a different ending. one with compassion, one that tells the daughter who raised her sister, who cared for the house, who held your hand when Dad stayed silent. I saw you. I appreciated you. But maybe that isn't in your emotional vocabulary. So today, I send you this wish. May you find peace with your decision. Because from this moment forward, I will no longer wait for you to change your mind. I'm no longer your daughter. Not legally, but because my love no longer deserves to be warped again. Goodbye, Olivia. I mailed the letter. No flowers, no gifts, just an envelope, 3 sheets of paper, and a red wax seal. End. 3 days later, Mom texted, "You're overreacting. It's my money. I have the right." I didn't reply. I never hated you. I just found you too different. And I didn't know how to love someone who wasn't like me. For the first time in 32 years, my mother admitted. She didn't know how to love me. I sat down. My heart didn't shatter. It opened. I typed, "I don't blame you for not being like me. I blame you for not letting me be myself without punishment." And that was the last message I ever sent her. 2 months later, I changed my phone number. I moved, still in Hartford, but no longer 15 minutes from the old house. I replaced the locks, closed the joint bank account with Dad. I kept the journal, but locked it in a safe. And I began writing my first book. Not about finance, but about emotional boundaries in controlling families. A small publisher, Emma New, agreed to take the first manuscript. I named the opening chapter, "Not Everyone Who Births You Has the Right to Keep You." That October afternoon, Samantha stopped by. She brought chocolate chip cookies, my childhood favorite. She didn't talk about Mom, didn't mention the will. She only said that she and David were expecting a baby. I hugged her. She said, "Her middle name will be Olivia. I know that doesn't make up for everything I once let happen. But I want my daughter to grow up knowing that there was a woman named Olivia who taught her mother how to rise from her own mother's shadow." I smiled, and I cried. For the first time in my life, I cried not from pain, but because I finally saw love doesn't need to come from a mother to live inside me. It can begin again. From an unborn child, from a sister making things right, from me, the woman who finally chose to walk away in order to live. And just when I thought the story had ended, another envelope arrived. This time not from Mom, but from Dad's private attorney, a revised will, a belated apology, and something I never thought I'd hear from that man. The pale blue envelope arrived on a Saturday morning. I was watering the plants on my windowsill, sunlight filtering through the damp mint leaves. I no longer felt my heart race at the sight of letters. I had learned to sever the thread that tied emotion to old memories. But when I saw the name printed neatly on the envelope, solid, deliberate, and the sender, Law Offices of Timothy Wilson, I paused. My hand froze over the watering can. Timothy Wilson was my father. I opened the envelope. Inside was a short letter attached to a copy of his newly revised will. "Olivia, I've left you alone far too long, not because I didn't love you, but because I didn't know how to swim against the current when that current was the woman I loved. But now, there's no excuse to stay silent. This is your share, not because I feel guilty, but because you deserve it. I can't rewrite the past, but I want to change the present. If you still want it, I'm here. Dad." I sat down, and for the first time in many months, I felt something gentle rise inside me. Not quite forgiveness, but acknowledgement. And to me, that was worth more than any inheritance. A week later, I met my father at the Esplanade Park, where a path runs along the Charles River. He wore his old brown jacket and carried 2 hot coffees. We didn't talk about Mom, didn't talk about Sarah, didn't talk about the lost years. He just looked at me and asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded. Better than ever. We sat on a stone bench. I told him about the book I was writing, about being invited to speak at a seminar on emotional boundaries, about the middle-aged women who had written to me, saying they too had been manipulated by their mothers and felt liberated after reading my story. He went quiet for a while, then said, "I wish I had your courage." I turned to him. "You don't need to be like me. You just need to be true to yourself. And today, you're already doing that." He smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't a smile of endurance, but one of real release. I never returned to the old house, but Dad invited me to his new apartment in Cambridge, near where I live. In that apartment, there was a painting I had made at 8 years old, the cat with the springy tail. He had kept it, reattached the edges, laminated it, and framed it. "My daughter's first masterpiece," he said as I stood before the painting. I laughed, and I cried. Not out of longing, but because I finally knew I didn't need anyone else to validate my worth. Samantha gave birth to her first daughter in April. David called me at 3 a.m., his voice stammering with joy. "The baby's healthy, weighs 3.4 kilograms, brown eyes, and her middle name is Olivia." I arrived at the hospital the next morning. Samantha hugged me the moment I walked in. The baby was so tiny in her arms, face rosy, hands curled like an unopened blossom. I sat down and gently ran my hand over her fine hair. I whispered, "You're the new beginning, and I promise, you'll be loved the right way, without condition, without control, without comparison." Samantha heard me. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I know, Mom may never fully apologize," she said, "but I want my daughter to learn love without having to learn sacrifice first, like we did." I took her hand. "Then we'll teach her differently." 3 months later, I published my first book, Loving Without Losing Yourself, the memoir of a child who tried too hard to please her mother. The book didn't name Mom directly, but anyone who read it understood. I didn't write it to accuse. I wrote it to liberate. For myself. For anyone who ever believed that family ties were sacred, even when they erased who you are. My first interview came from a podcast called Mother Wound Chronicles. The host asked me, "If your mother is listening, what would you want to say?" I answered, "Mom, if you're listening, I'm no longer angry. I only hope you understand that I stopped waiting for you to become the mother I needed. And because of that, I finally began to grow." I didn't cut my mother off completely, but I set clear boundaries. No surprise phone calls, no unannounced visits, no discussions of finances, emotions, or family history without a neutral third party like Anna. The last time I saw her was at Christmas. I visited Dad, Samantha, and my niece. Then I stopped by Mom's house to deliver one gift, an empty picture frame with a card. "I didn't send a photo because I think you should choose the memory you believe is real and put it in here, as long as this time you don't flip it over again." She opened the card, looked at the frame, said nothing. But for the first time, her eyes didn't dodge mine, didn't deny, didn't flare with anger. They simply acknowledged. And for me, that was enough. I got married a year later. A small ceremony, 32 guests, in the backyard of a friend. No extravagant gown, no celebrity attendees. Emma proposed with a handwritten song. We stood beneath a white flower-covered arch. My father walked me down the aisle. Samantha gave a speech. She said, "My sister was once excluded from a wedding because she dared to be herself. Today, she steps into marriage because she remained herself." People clapped. And in that moment, I knew. I had completed my journey back to myself. No longer seeking validation. No longer waiting for overdue apologies. No longer afraid of being cast out. I was no longer standing outside a family. I was building a new one, from within. And if you're listening to this story, and you've ever felt like you had to earn your place in your parents' hearts, I want you to know this. You are not a trophy to make someone feel powerful. You are not the custodian of someone else's emotional wreckage. And you are not obligated to stay in a relationship just because they're blood. Family is not a birth certificate. Family is a repeated act. It's the one who stays when you hurt, who believes you when you say, I'm wounded, and who steps back when you say, I need space. If you've never had that from your family, you are allowed to rebuild. From friends, from community, from people who actually see you. And you will no longer be excluded from the table. Because this time, you're the one who built it.